needed no horses. Part of me wondered how these folks would implement my ideas. With magic, they could potentially use the concepts of the steam engine in ways that would never function on Earth. What would they create? I couldn't begin to guess. I grinned from ear to ear, truly feeling good about my lecturing skills, maybe better than I'd ever felt on Earth. After Peardian suggested it, I'd gone from teaching 1 class to 3. I felt happier now than I ever had before. I slept better, and I had so much energy. I wrapped up this portion of the lecture. It felt good to be back in my element. I realized with some surprise that if it weren't for the wraiths, I might be willing to give up the idea of going home. I was content here. The students loved me. Some of the people around me were starting to feel like family. In the front row, one of my students raised a hand. My gaze settled on him. I drew to a stop. A familiar face from before I'd met the Shadow Council or encountered any wraiths sat there, leaning forward eagerly. "Yes, Sir Adam." Adam grinned. "So, I'm not sure I get all the math stuff, but what do you recommend we make these engine thingies from? Because it seems like there's a lot of stuff to it, and also, all that steam, where will it go when it blows out the tube? Also, what happens when the water runs out? Because isn't that an issue?" I nodded and glanced out the window. Rows of floor-to-ceiling glass provided a wondrous view of the courtyard outside. Sunlight shone through the glass from both ends of the room, casting bright rays onto the classroom's wooden floors and arched ceiling. I paced again, speaking with a supportive voice. "Good points, Sir Adam. Those are all important considerations. I was about to bring up the importance of choosing the right metal, so let's talk about that. Essentially, it comes down to whether you want something lightweight or strong. Something like aluminum will perform the best in terms of weight, but you pay the price there in strength and durability. I'm not sure I would recommend it." On Earth, it would be different. We had technologies that could make sturdier aluminum, stuff they didn't have here. I glanced to Adam's left at several older men in his vicinity. They scribbled notes on thin sheets of paper. Their gazes darted from those sheets to me and back with frantic expressions as they hurried to write everything down. The class was a mixture of different folk, a large assortment of middle-aged men, blacksmiths, and craftspeople of various kinds, alongside a sprinkling of scholars, the odd soldier here and there, and a large pack of dwarves. I always had a few friends in the crowd. Adam was here this time, and sometimes Otto would drop in with him. Halgrim sat a few chairs down from Adam. His eyes were wide, his expression focused. A gang of dwarves sat alongside and behind him. One wrote madly on a piece of paper. Sam was in the back of the class. He had some papers in front of him, but he leaned back in his chair and sipped water from a canteen as I continued to explain some of the intricacies of building the engine. Eventually, I retreated toward the stone wall in the back of the room where I'd written the equation. The glowing letters and numbers were still there, glued to the stone. I let the class sit in silence for a moment while I brushed the stick over each part of the equation. Letters and numbers fell away as I touched them, disappearing toward the ground like small dust clusters. The stone wall was bare again. I shook the stick and the rune stone activated, causing one end to glow. This is a basic sketch of what the engine will need to look like. The only sound was pens scribbling on paper as I drew the old Greek eolipile. My mind wandered again, this time to the wraiths. I knew I ought not to feel guilty, and I didn't tell anyone I still felt that way. However, news arrived nearly every day of wraiths attacking villages in other kingdoms and transforming more land into wastelands. I wish there was more I could do about their inexorable invasion. I felt horrible and helpless. I looked at my students again, relishing my connection with them and this land. I'd opened the barrier. I must have when I passed through. Even if I hadn't, I felt terrible that my duchy continued to sit and do nothing to aid the others. There hadn't been any attacks on Kortall since we repelled the combined forces of the wraiths and the Shadow Council. That was the only good news. Every other kingdom was getting kicked in the guts by them. I turned back toward the class and noticed Halgrim with a raised hand. I wandered away from the stone wall and pointed at him. "Yes, Halgrim?" The dwarven engineer bounced in his chair.
Duke Smith! Wow, okay.